Howdy. This is Mission Texas.
A political podcast about winning Texas by 2032, or else we may lose the White House for a generation.
I'm one of your hosts, Alex Clark.
And I am Kate Rumsey.
Other podcasts may focus on the day-to-day or the next election, but we are keeping the eyes of Texas on the bigger prize. What happens after the next census?
All right, welcome back to Mission Texas. Today we're joined by Rafael Anchia, Chairman Anchia, Representative Anchia, a longtime Dallas area state representative, and someone who's worked shoulder to shoulder with many of the Democrats that are now running statewide. He brings a perspective that few people have. He doesn't just watch these races from the outside. He's served with these candidates in the House, where he's been for over 2 decades now, debated policy with them and seen firsthand how they lead when the cameras are off. So I'm very excited to get into our conversation today. Rafael and I, it feels a little weird to call you Rafael, but is it
You
okay
can call me
if I-
Rafa if it feels better.
Rafa? Okay.
Rafa? Okay.
I'm very excited to be on with him. He's actually one of the first people I met when I moved to Dallas because of our connection to the law firm Haynes and Boone. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, Alex. This is really exciting. And Kate, great to see you. I'm really interested in sharing some ideas and experiences with y'all. And congratulations on the pod. We need more of these.
Yeah,
Thank
we're
you.
trying to build out the ecosystem as an independent media organization here.
Yeah.
Before we jump into the election, and we want to get all of your insights, take us back a moment because I'm always very interested in people's origin stories. How did you become Representative Angie? How did you get into politics in the first place, and what drove you to that?
Almost accidentally. I explained to people that I never thought I would be in politics, never ran for anything really in high school, never on the student council. I guess I did run for Young Democrats. There were 4 of us in my high school, and I think I came in third or something. But I didn't run for anything in fraternity in college and it wasn't until 2000 rolled around and I had been involved in launching a leadership program in south of I-30 in North Oak Cliff that included Adamson and Sunset high schools. I coached the Sunset mock trial team. I was a terrible coach. I was no good. Worked with the debate team down there because, and I can take a step further. I was principal. I went through Leadership Dallas in 1998, 1999, before you all were born. And I was walking.
Born.
I was walking with barely. I was walking with the principal, and I asked him. I saw the demographics of Sunset High School were really similar to the high school I went to. 90+% Hispanic. And I asked him. I said, "Hey, can I meet with some of your mock trial students, or can I meet with some of your debate students?" He was like, "No, we don't have that." I was like, "What? What do you mean you don't have those things? They made such a big difference to me." My neighborhood, I didn't know any lawyers. And it wasn't until lawyers came from a big firm and volunteered for mock trial, that I got to touch one, and see them in a suit. And I thought that looked really interesting because I wanted to be James Bond. And that looked like the closest thing in my neighborhood that looked like James Bond, right? And so I asked the principal, "No, we don't have that." So I volunteered. I said, "Now you do." And I volunteered, and I got my prior firm to kind of adopt Sunset High School. And we were just I didn't know what I was doing as a mock trial coach, but the most important thing is I was bringing lawyers to the campus, and for the women, especially for the young Hispanic women at Sunset, to see female lawyers was a game changer. And I've run into a bunch of the people who were in the mock trial program back then. That was so successful that we then launched this leadership program with the sort of the student council kids from Adamson and Sunset, and we would bring them together in a Leadership Dallas style program, and then they had an annual project that they needed to work on to improve community. And we wanted them to see each other as kind of the same, as not rivals, but rather, collaborators, and get them to think about solving problems together. Well, that lasted for a little while. And then I went to a Leadership Dallas breakfast I was sitting next to a friend of mine, John Delander, with whom I saw last night. He's still at DISD. He was then, I think, like the head of communications. And Ron Kirk was the speaker, Mayor Ron Kirk. And Ron had a really pointed speech. He was like, "You leadership Dallas people, you all are just resume builders. You really don't do anything. I'm challenging all of you to
Wow.
step up." Dallas ISD at the time, there were bills in the legislature to break up Dallas ISD into 4 different districts, right? Too big. It's about to fail. We had 5 superintendents in 5 years. Things were really, really bad. And he said, "You all need to step up." And John tugged on my sleeve and he said, "You need to run." It's like,
Huh.
I'm on partnership track, bro. What are you talking about? You know,
Yeah.
and there had been tapings, there had been FBI investigations. One of the superintendents embezzled $19,000 of tacky bedroom furniture, and went to jail, and it was just a mess. But my predecessor in office, Jose Plata, was stepping aside. Mayor Kirk called me in to his office, and you're just a
Oh,
young lawyer
wow.
that's sort of disconnected from. And the
Yeah.
mayor calls you and wants to have a meeting. I hear you've been doing some good stuff down there. I You need to run for this seat. There were a couple people who were rumored to run, and he's like, "You need to run for the seat. You're young. You're a trained lawyer. You have good skills, and you need to do." I was like, super. Ron Kirk, he's a legend.
Right.
I'm like,
Look, you don't
wow.
have
Mayor
to
Kurt,
explain it to me.
man.
I'm actually a Ron Kirk super fan and have been for a really long time. And
Yeah.
my people might not believe that, but it's because I went to Austin College
Oh, you're a
and Ron
fighting
Mhm.
Kirk went to
kangaroo.
Austin College. And
Yeah.
then I went to UT Law and he went to UT Law. I'm like, Ron Kirk is like the coolest guy. He was the mayor of Dallas. He was
Super
Obama's
cool.
trade representative.
Alex is like, I'm running for mayor now.
Oh,
So
you can't make me
Good.
do that.
Yeah, yeah. I thought you all were friends. What happened?
yeah.
Um, so,
Mhm.
so, so Ron says, "Listen, I'm going to call the managing partner. Who's the managing partner of the Dallas office of your firm?" I gave him the name. He said, "I'm going to call him," and he did. He called him. He said, "We want this guy to run for office." At the time, my city council person was Laura Miller, with whom I was friendly. My state rep was Steve Woolens, her husband, with whom I was friendly. And before you knew it, I had Laura Miller and Ron Kirk, who didn't like each other, endorsing me, and Steve Woolens endorsing me, and John Wiley Price, who had protested in front of Laura Miller's and Ron Kirk's homes,
Wow.
endorsing me. So the momentum just started and started and started, and then my predecessor in office, Jose Plata, endorsed me. And it was so accidental. But I tell the young people all the time, I said, find an issue you're passionate about and do it. Like, and in this case, it was me, as the son of a public school teacher, wanting to be involved in public schools. And the only way I knew how to do it and not do it well, but mock trial
Yeah.
coach, and that sort of snowballed. And then 3 years later, I had been on the ballot twice. There was a funky little law that said all 9 trustees at DISD needed to run again after redistricting. So I served for a 1-year term. We did redistricting. I ran again. We restaggered the terms. So I served 2 abbreviated terms, 3 years. And then Steve Woolens calls me. And he says, "Listen, I'm on my way to WFAA. I'm not going to call anybody else. You and I have worked together as my school board member. I like you. We had collaborated even more by that time." And he said, "You're going to run for state rep." I looked over, and my then wife was pregnant, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah.
I had already taken a beating financially, for running for office, because my law firm said, "Hey, absolutely, we got a call from the mayor. We think it'd be great for you to run. We're gonna we're gonna put you on a lower billable hour track. We're gonna give you like a 25% cut, and we'll only cut your pay by like 40%." And I was like,
That's not fair.
Wait,
"Yeah." So it didn't,
mathing
So
there.
so I
Nah.
was like, "Okay, now, I'm gonna, be gone for 140 days every 2 years if I win this race. How's that gonna work?" Well, they kept me on that, ultimately, no regrets, but as you know, Kate, it is not good financially. Big law and running for office is rough. Um, so he calls me, "You're going to run." Was like, "Steve, Steve Woolens, your state rep, has been there for 24 years. Is like, you're going to run, and I'm going to support you." I was like, "Oh, okay," and um, and I'm glad I did it. So I ran. Domingo Garcia was the other candidate in the race. Um, um, that he had represented a district wholly outside of District 103, and ultimately he was rejected from filing because he didn't live in the district, and he was the only other one who filed. So there began the happy state rep career of Rafael Anchia without an opponent with a opponent who had been kicked off the ballot, and no general election.
Right. And remind us, what year was that?
This is before God's parents were born.
Okay.
In 2004, I was elected.
2004.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
that's
elected
amazing.
it was a long time ago. So between the school board service, which began in May of 2021, and now my state house service, it's been 25 years.
Yeah. Well, I have two follow-up questions on that before we dive into the primaries, because I think it helps us explain like what's going on, which is, can you help us understand where your district is now? Because I know it's evolved. And two, a lot of your colleagues, especially the ones from 2018 who flipped seats, are now running for statewide. So I'm wondering, do you got any like FOMO here? Like, should I have thrown my hat into any of these races, or you wish you were weighing into these big primaries?
No. And
Okay.
and for a couple of different reasons. I'm in the most beautiful relationship of my life. And so on a personal basis, it's been, really, really fulfilling to be able to dedicate time to Rebecca. And our daughters are doing great. So that's been fantastic. I don't think, in another elected capacity that would have been achievable. And then I've been able to have a successful law career and at the same time found a real estate investment firm that's now 15 years old. We have 40 employees, and I would have never done that, been able to do that
Hmm.
in another capacity. This is being in a citizen legislature does give you the ability to be an entrepreneur and do these kinds of things. So really, no regrets. People say, "Hey, why don't you run for Congress?"
Yeah.
When they created the 33rd congressional district, Mark Vesey and I, really, really close friends in the legislature, and we had those discussions. Gosh, Congress does not
A
sound
lot.
exciting at
Yeah.
all. It sounds awful.
Yeah.
And it was less awful back then. Imagine, but I still thought
Yeah.
it was awful back then. And then the other one that has come up repeatedly is mayor. That's come up since 2007. That's just a hard job. That's a
Yeah.
hard job, and it requires, it's treated like a part-time job, but it's
No,
it's
I know.
it's
And
time and a half.
yeah, and they all have full-time jobs or jobs they maintain as well. But I understand your district, it covers a lot, even part of my hometown of Carrollton now.
Hmm.
So, where else is your district these days?
So I live in North Oak Cliff, and I've represented different parts of Oak Cliff. Right now the dividing line is Davis Avenue. So if you're like at Norma's,
Mm, yeah.
on Davis, you're at the southern pole of the district. The district has gone farther down to 12th Street before, so I've represented the Bishop Arts district for a long time, although it's not in the district currently. And then it goes, and I have always represented parts of Irving. Right now, just a sliver of Irving that includes a little bit of Las Colinas and the University of Dallas, the old Texas Stadium site the Cowboys used to play in,
Oh, yeah.
that I represented. And then it goes out east. I've always represented Oak Lawn, Cedar Springs. Always, 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 always represented North Park Elm Thicket, which is a traditional African American neighborhood that is kind of boxed between Inwood, Lovers, Mockingbird, and Love Field Airport. Right.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm very close to that community. Always represented Love Field Airport. Then you go up north, Northwest Dallas, densely packed, multifamily, new immigrant communities. Always represented that Koreatown and the Korean entrepreneurs in Northwest Dallas. And then on, depending on which decade and which redistricting, lots of Farmers Branch and Carrollton.
Well, I'm really glad that you picked up Ron Kirk's gauntlet that he threw down at that speech, and you've kept showing up. I mean, it would have been easy to bow out at some point, but you keep showing up and you keep serving, and I think that's great. I
Thank
would
you.
like to switch gears now, though. We've had some great recent news as Texas Democrats. What a win in Senate District 9.
Yeah.
Incredible, incredible. And, I had met Taylor on a couple of different occasions. When I had my Texas OU fundraiser, he showed up just to meet me. I was like, wow, this guy's cool. And then, but I wasn't connected with the campaign necessarily. After he got through the first round, everybody's eyes opened up and said, okay, this could be real. But we always thought it was going to be a squeaker. We always
Hmm.
thought, oh, this is, this picks up some pretty radical parts of Tarrant County where, there's Patriot Mobile and,
Yeah.
and Tim Dunn and his crew have invested a lot of money and turned school districts around. This is Tim O'Hare. Gosh,
Yeah.
what are we really going to achieve here? But so I went to I went to walk with him right before the election in heavy Hispanic areas. Took my whole team, and I got to be honest with you, it was right after the freeze. I did not expect for him to win. I mean,
Wow.
the hitting Hispanic doors is hard because you're there in the middle of the day. It gets dark at 5, right? So you're walking 2 to 5. Nobody's home. Everybody's
Yeah.
working, you know?
Hmm.
They get some
People have
seniors.
jobs.
Yeah, everybody's working, like either their first or their second job, right? And then, and if you've been to parts of the district I represent, like Ledbetter, Eagle Ford, there are iron fences in front of the houses, and there's usually at least one or two very large dogs, right? So you're trying to get to the door, and it's hard. The freeze had just happened, so people were still there was still ice on the ground when we were walking, and I said, "Oh man,
Yeah.
this is going to be tough.
Rough.
This is going to be tough." A lot of early vote got cannibalized by the freeze, so that was rough. I said, "Man," and then to see on election night, um, forget a squeaker, a 30-point swing
Yeah,
in that district and a
crazy.
13-point win outright. Somebody told me, one of the old heads in the legislature told me that a 5-point win electorally is an ass kicking.
Yeah.
Anything
Yeah.
north of that is a wipeout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a wipeout.
Right.
Yes.
For him to go plus 13, I mean, he went plus 30, but for him to win by 13,
Yeah.
destroyed. I mean,
Absolutely.
and I
Uh,
was just on a call earlier today with some folks out of Washington, and I mean, like alarm bells are
Mhm.
going
I
off.
hope
They're
so.
freaking the hell out, and talking about how that impacts how it impacts the Republican strategy in the senatorial. What it
Hmm.
looks like for expenditure of funds, what it means for places like Maine and Alaska, and the allocation of dollars. It's incredible what's happening.
Yeah, in an interview I saw after he was elected, Senator-elect Rehmet attributed it to his message of unity and not running against Republicans, but running on working class issues.
Hmm.
I mean, that seems pretty compelling to me, but do you have any other insights into what do you think was behind all this? Like what was different to make a plus 17 Trump district turn into a plus 13, 14, Taylor Rehmet district?
I always say it starts with the candidate, right?
Hmm.
Is Does this candidate fit the district? And
Mm.
he's out of central casting, right?
Yeah.
He's the head of the machinists union, works over there by Lockheed,
Right.
right? The
Yeah.
economic engine of Tarrant County.
And an Air
So
Force veteran.
he's a veteran. He's a veteran, so he can speak with gravitas and clarity about these working class issues. And then on all the lit that we were dropping, he has this cowboy hat on. He looks like just like out of central casting. He looks great. Like all the text on the lit, which was a little bit dense for my taste, but the text was about working class issues. It wasn't race, wasn't ethnicity, you know, he was smart enough to be able to navigate the stickiness of folks, demanding a dismantling of ICE and having a responsible answer that, hey, we'll always need interior immigration enforcement.
Yeah.
That's a non-negotiable because people want to hurt us.
Yeah.
They want to hurt
Mhm.
the United States, and we love America, and we need to stop the bad guys, but at the same time, talk about reform of what
Mhm.
has become a rogue agency. And so he didn't fall for any of the traps that sometimes our candidates fall for.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
he stayed on message,
Right.
message discipline, candidate straight out of central casting. You know, that's where it all starts. And
Yeah.
then you kind of figure out where the temperature of that district or the state or the country is come election
Right.
time, starting after Labor Day of 2026.
One of the things, it's so funny you were talking about lit because everybody has different lit. I've been knocking a lot of doors. I knocked doors for my own race.
Literature for the
Uh,
non-lingo.
Literature, yeah, it's what you're putting on the doors and handing out at events. And you're like, okay, what 3 bullet points am I going to put on there? And what am I going to say about my bio that's summed up in 43 years? But I had heard that also part of it was that a lot of people, because of Patriot Mobile, what you were talking about, which is what like Wham Scans, however you say her name, that was one of her companies, and they created a pack, and it was pretty MAGA and a lot of school board races. And we heard a lot about how parents had really gotten organized, especially in Keller ISD, Grapevine, Southlake, and they stayed organized. And I think some people were frustrated that the national discourse was like, oh, this is a referenda on Trump. And it was really like, no, this is a celebration of working class messaging and also the people who have gotten off their sofas and said, I'm going to do something about these public schools. And who can do something about it? It's my state and Senate representatives. So I just, my hat is tipped off to the people who did the hard work. And I also want to give a shout out to a lot of the other candidates that are running in contested primaries and also just the general, because they all came out during their own primary season to knock doors for him. And I had heard that it took away from their own volunteer hours for their own door knocks. So it's a big testament to us all coming together as Democrats, which I think we need to hear. Like, yeah, Rafa is giving a brain explosion emoji. And it's so important because, as we'll talk about later about the Senate race, like we should be celebrating these come together moments and showing how we as Democrats can do that. And people should be with us and get off the couch, put the blue jersey on, as we've said, and that it's a warm tent. You're welcome, especially in Tarrant County, which is where even Stephen Bannon is saying that like this is ground zero for the country. So we are definitely proponents of Tarrant County. We are supporters of Allison Campolo and all those candidates out there. So, anyways, I just wanted to give that shout out. But I mean,
And can
it's
I offer, sorry, not to cut you off, I'd like to
no,
offer a couple more shout outs. Shout
oh,
out to Beau
absolutely.
French, shout out to Tim O'Hare, shout
Thank
out,
you. Yeah,
shout out to Greg Abbott and Mike Morath. All politics are local. When they announced the Fort Worth ISD takeover during election season,
yeah,
I mean, you talk about a gift.
Yeah.
The reason those families stayed engaged is that they wanted to split. All the MAGA guys wanted to split Keller. They're like, hey,
yep,
we live here for a reason. We love our public schools.
yeah,
Then Morath and Abbott say, hey, we're gonna take over Fort Worth ISD, and people are like, what the hell? I
yep,
mean, so it's like preparation meets opportunity, right? All the things you talked about, but I mean, they really did give us a couple of significant public school gifts, and you layer on top of that this being a referendum on vouchers as well,
mm-hmm,
and you can just see how all the pieces came together.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece of nuance that these people were voting for Taylor Rehmet. They weren't voting for the Democratic Party, right? Like the exit polls show like the people who were voting, when you break it down by people who typically vote in the Democratic primary, the Republican primary, maybe they're infrequent voters or maybe they're new voters. Like Taylor outperformed across, like just mathematically, he had to have win that big. Right.
yeah,
And so I think it's important to remember in the broader context that we're actually at a banner year for people who are like independent. Like something like 45% of the country now identifies as independent and 27% each. identify as Democrat or Republican. So I think it's really important that we keep that in mind. And yes, we want to build that tent.
100%. Dan Patrick's messaging was, "Oh, Republicans didn't come out." Well, that's not true. Republicans came out and voted for Taylor.
Yes.
Independents
Yeah.
came out overwhelmingly and voted for Taylor.
Hmm.
That's the fundamentals of the race. Do you have a candidate that will allow those people to come on over and vote for them?
Well, so that's the Senate race. I'm wondering, Rep. Anchia, as we gear up for your colleagues in the state house, like how are you thinking about it as we head in? Because we flipped 12 seats in 2018. We've talked to a lot of them. How many do we need to take back over the legislature? How are you thinking about it as we head into the general?
We're at 62 currently, 88, 62. I think we're going to win a bunch of seats this cycle. The question is, how many? Do we win 4 or do we win 12? Right. I've seen the big swings. When I was first started in the legislature, we were at 62. Then we won 6 seats, in the Craddock years running against Tom Craddock. And then we got to 68, and then we got to 76, 74. And there was one seat in Irving that we lost by 15 votes. We would have been at parity, at actual parity, 75-75. And you know what the mechanism is for breaking a 75-75 tie in the legislature?
No idea.
Flipping a coin.
Are you kidding me?
I
Are
really,
you joking?
if a candidate cannot get to 76 votes outright, like, where you'd have one Democrat flipping this way or one Republican flipping that way, you flip a coin. Crazy.
Wow.
Yep. So we were
Insane.
almost in coin flip territory, although we did have a Democratic candidate that I think would have been able to get at least one Republican to have the majority. We were so close. And then the 2010 election happened, and we went from 74 to 48.
Mm.
We went from virtual parity. We went from really controlling. I mean, we were winning vote after vote after vote in the House with only 74, and then Republicans got a super majority in 2011, and
Yeah.
that was brutal.
All she
Brutal.
wrote.
All
Yeah.
she wrote. We've been trying to, claw our way back. So I think
Well, the hopeful note on that is 2010 was a midterm for a Democratic president, and 2026
mhm,
is a midterm for a Republican president. So,
and a second term, right?
yeah,
A second term.
really
No,
unhinged
that
second
was
term.
first term. Sorry, that was first term. You're right. Yeah, so I think the fundamentals look good for us. And then, if we have a really good year, pick up 12, we're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Even if we get to 80, 70,
Yeah.
we're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Well, I wanted to just shout out to our friend Christian Carranza who came on. She was our second guest, and I'm hearing it has one of the most flippable seats in the state near San Antonio and Bexar County. So we're definitely putting our eyes on that race. Any other close flips that you think might happen, or any other races we should be thinking about on primary day?
Well, it just depends on the tide. I mean, one of the most talented members of the legislature I ever served with is a guy named Patrick Rose.
Mm.
Represented Dripping Springs, had a documentary made about him, Last
Yeah.
Man Standing, by Paul Steckler, made it really good. Yeah, and he was prolific fundraiser. He was so connected to community. I called him the day before the 2010 election. I said, "Hey man, how are you feeling?" He's like, "Look, everything that I can control feels so good. We've got the biggest lit program, the biggest door program, the biggest phone banking program. We've raised twice the amount of money that I've ever raised before. We feel great. What I cannot control is what happens nationally." And he's like, "If the tide gets too high, we'll drown."
Yeah.
So it's tough to tell. But there are districts that are very thin. There's some districts in South Texas that look really within, a high tide. Corpus Christi. You've got Bexar County. There are a lot of districts that where you see a high tide that a high tide would flip them, and then you've got districts locally, and this is despite a map that was supposed to give Republicans, a virtually permanent majority, that
Mhm.
that have been viewed as intentionally discriminatory in the legislature.
Right.
I think we're going to have a big year, and the tide's going to be really high.
Yeah, I mean, if we can do a 30-point swing in every district, we're gonna clean up.
Yeah, yeah. Gosh, if we just do a 10-point swing,
Yeah.
that's going to be huge.
Do you want to move on to any other down ballot races? Because I'm really curious how you think about how the party has performed and being able to staff like every single race across the country or across the state. And that just includes county judge races, county commissioner, precinct, or justice of the peace. There's all sorts of county level positions that have been filled for races and judges. And they don't get as much love as our other top ballot races. But how are you perceiving that?
I mean, I think, county commissioner seats in suburban counties are there are a couple that will flip if the tide gets high enough. You're going to see, and you usually start seeing it with commissioner because they're so big. When those start falling, then the stuff underneath the commissioner seat
Yeah.
falls. Districts that you never expect. Um, you're seeing a lot of movement in Collin County. We spend a lot of time talking about Tarrant, seeing a lot of movement in Collin County. The Collin County GOP
Hmm.
endorsed candidates in the city council races got schmeckled. They lost,
Yes.
right?
I had a
And
friend
so
in Frisco who was telling me, like, hey, I get Taylor Remmett. I'm glad, but pay attention to Frisco and like everything that's happening in there. And anyway, so I'm affirming what you just said. So,
yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And so Colin, watch Denton County. Um,
yeah.
that stuff may move. And then I'm always optimistic that on the statewide, no, not Senate, not U.S. Senate, but on the state side, we're going to break through somewhere, and it's going to be in a place where we didn't expect it. I remember in 2006, shortly after I was, elected, every county-wide position was held by a Republican. All of them.
Hmm.
Yeah, here in
Just
Dallas. Yeah.
yeah, Dallas County. Sorry, I didn't leave that
Yeah,
context.
yeah. Sorry.
All of it in Dallas County. In fact, Margaret Kelleher was the uber popular county judge. She was great on clean air and environmental issues, and then the guy who ran against her was Foster. Foster walked up to me on filing night at the Democratic Party filing. Obviously, said, Raphael, I think I just may have made a big mistake, but they were looking around and needed somebody to file for county judge, and I just filed. I mean, he's got had a thick accent, and lo and behold, he was the county judge,
Yeah.
right? And so when you're not going to see where it's coming, so a guy like John Rosenthal running for the Railroad Commission, where you've got this crazy primary happening, where they're going to topple potentially an incumbent railroad commissioner, and then you have a subject matter expert like my desk mate John Rosenthal's a petroleum engineer, and everybody likes John. I mean,
Yeah.
he's such an affable guy.
Yeah.
He's
Yes.
running a terrific campaign, a low resource campaign, and somebody like that's going to break through.
Right.
Where you have a division on one side, it's how the Republicans broke through with John Tower, back in the day, and broke that stranglehold that Southern Democrats had on Texas. You're going to see something like that potentially this cycle.
Well, so can I, and sorry if I'm jumping in, Alex, but please tell me if you want to jump in as well. But just on that, we talked to John Rosenthal and his episode will come out soon. But in that conversation, we were reminded, as you're saying, that the flip of our state, after we had about 100 years of Southern Democrats and the Republicans started taking over, was not at a top of the ticket race. It was on a down ballot race. And that I'm wondering, just as we get into talking about these statewide races, which is a good segue, just how much the oxygen just gets sucked up by these bigger races and whether we should instead, as we're trying to advocate on this podcast, like really paying attention to the down ballot ones where there's less of this like mudslinging and the culture wars. And it's just talking about like, let's keep the lights on, like let's do that. So I'm wondering how you think of that, and especially as we're talking about these down ballot races. We talked to John Rosenthal. We are having Clayton Tucker on, who's for ag commissioner.
It's going to happen in one of those. I'm old enough to remember races where everybody talks about 3 points with Beto in 2018. There have been closer races. You had a race called the Willits Moody race. Joe Moody, State Representative Joe Moody's dad, ran for Supreme Court and came really, really close. There was a Moody Wainwright race, which was, I think, 2 points.
Oh,
So
wow.
there have been examples. I tell people, it's going to happen in Texas. We're not going to see it. Like every state, every Republican state around us has had a Democratic governor, since I've been in politics,
Yeah.
and some very recently. Louisiana had a Democratic governor just recently. Arkansas has had a Democratic governor just recently. Kansas is not next to us, but they had a Democratic governor, two Democratic governors.
Yeah.
And then Oklahoma had Brad Henry,
Yeah.
right?
Look, you're
So,
singing
like,
my song. Like every Republican Party has elected a Democrat more recently statewide somewhere. Maybe not the governor or the Senate, but somewhere more recently than we have elected a Democrat. And every
Schwarzenegger in
other Republican,
California.
yeah, and every other Democratic Party has elected somebody statewide more recently than we have. So there's really no good reason for that because those states aren't like less conservative than us.
Better, yeah.
They're more they're more conservative than us. Like Kentucky has like a 30-point Trump state and it has a Democratic governor right now.
And when I remind people that yes, it was a rough cycle last cycle, but when Joe Biden beat Donald Trump in 2020, my wife ran the Biden campaign in the state of Texas, and it was 5.5,
Wow.
5.5%.
If
I mean,
if a Republican came within 5 points of winning California, do you know how excited the Republican Party would be and how many resources they would pour in to take California?
no question.
Where was the cavalry after Biden came within 5 points of Texas?
And Rebecca did it with like a $2 million budget or
That's what I'm
something, like,
saying.
Wow.
obscene. Like she it was an interesting cocktail, but something like that's going to hit. Like the time comptroller, right? Sarah
Mhm.
Eckhart can break through down there. The comptroller, it's a really important position. They're having a bloody primary right now. Don Huffines wins the comptroller's race. What? If that happens, it's on.
Yeah.
Like it is so on.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about the statewide. We can just march from the bottom of the ballot up, at least just for the contested ones. Obviously, if you're uncontested like a Clayton Tucker or John Rosenthal, we wish you well. You're the nominee.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
But I just have a sample ballot up in front of me. It looks like Justice Supreme Court place 7. We have a fight between Kristen Hawkins and Gordon Goodman. Any thoughts there?
No.
No. Okay, moving on.
Well, just go through them, and if I have thoughts, I'll chime
Yeah.
in.
Chief Justice Supreme Court Corey Carlisle, Maggie Ellis. All right.
Wish them luck.
Commissioner of the General Land Office, Jose Loya and Benjamin Flores. I don't know anything about Benjamin Flores, but I know Jose Loya is getting a lot of attention because of his union credentials. He's kind of
Okay.
basically running on a slate with Marcos Velez for lieutenant governor. But that's all I really know about him so far. So
Right.
Okay, well, comptroller, public accounts, Savant Moore, Sarah Eckhart, who you mentioned, and Michael Lang.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, I just know Sarah from being county judge,
Down in Travis County, right?
yeah, and she was a very competent, county judge. You have to be less political and just more competent. You have to inspire confidence among the population that you're a good administrator, and she did that, and she easily won the Senate seat. And she's going to have a lot of votes that come out of Travis County. She's beloved. She's
I think this is
really,
something
really
people don't really understand is that if you are a Texas state senator, you represent more people than a congressman or congresswoman do
oh my
because
God.
there's like 15 seats, period, right?
31 total.
Oh,
How our founders
way
how,
off. Sorry.
no, how our founders came up with 31, I have no idea, but 31 is the number in the state Senate. So yeah, you represent actually a lot more than a member.
Juan Jose, we're going to edit this whole part out where I said 15.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, we're not, Juan Jose. We're keeping it in.
okay, so people don't understand this. There are 31 seats in the Texas Senate.
Right. Whatever.
Precisely, you nailed it.
I heard
You
you.
must follow this very closely. You're a student of the chamber, aren't
We were
you?
just talking about county judge with Sarah. But can I ask you, someone had told me on that topic that the entree into bigger offices these days, if you're wanting to do one, like as you like climb the ladder of experience, maybe is not necessarily through like school board or city council. Maybe it's through the county judges and the county commissioners, and to think about running in those seats before you take over or try to do a bigger office to your point, just the sheer size of it. Have you heard that, or is that anything that resonates with you?
It does. It does. I mean, first of all, you represent a boatload of people. I mean, Elba Garcia's commissioner district, by way of example, it could be a congressional district. And in fact, I've submitted a map many times to create a Hispanic majority congressional district based off of her commissioner district. They're very, very large. They have budgets, right? They have road and bridge districts, so they're building infrastructure, and so it's a big job. And then it is not considered a full time job. So you could have your law practice, for example. You could have your dentist practice, as Elba does here in Dallas County, and at the same time be a commissioner. And so it is very, very good. And I'll put a finer point on it. The best place to be to run for something else, if you want to run for something else, is anything with a 6-year term or a 4-year term, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so commissioner, county judge, state senate.
Yeah. So you can run in between. Yeah.
Railroad commissioner, you get a free shot because you get a 6-year term. That's why Christy
Oh,
Craddock is running in the Republican primary
Mm.
for comptroller, because
interesting.
she just gets to sit there for 6 years and see, and kind of see how things are playing out.
Let's say we've covered everything at the bottom of the statewide ballot. Now we've reached the top three that most people think about as like the state leaders, right? Governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. Those are the big three in the Republican Party right now. You got your Governor Abbott, you got your Lieutenant Governor Patrick, you got your Attorney General Ken Paxton. I get kind of annoyed as an attorney whenever the Supreme Court comes out with an opinion, and then one of those three guys will put out a press release, and then the Texas Supreme Court will be like, "Oh, actually, we've reconsidered our position now that the bosses have said so." So let's get into it. Attorney General, what do we know about Joe Jaworski, Nathan Johnson, and Tony Box? We have interviewed all three of them. They've all had their episodes published. But if you have any additional insights into that race, I think it's an important one.
I mean, very important. I'm biased here. Nathan and I have known each other. I practiced law for a while with his former wife. Our kids grew up together to like preschool together. So I've just known him for a long, long time. And he beat Don Huffines to win his seat, which was that was kind of a big breakthrough moment, because that seat had been held by Republicans for a long time, John Corona and others. And so I'm a big Nathan Johnson fan, just on a personal level. Joe Jaworski seems nice enough. That the race has been a little bit snippy, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so low volume, it never, you never pick up on it. And I don't know. I don't know the third candidate.
Yeah, Tony Box, really impressive late entrance into the race. I think all three of them are great. Tony is a veteran, former prosecutor, really compelling life story.
That's a stout resume. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we'd be well served with any of them as the next Attorney General of Texas, especially coming out of the Paxton era. I'm actually very concerned with the primary that's going on the other side. I went to law school with Aaron Wright, who Ken Paxton has endorsed, and he's a true
Something.
MAGA true believer.
He has said some ridiculous, extreme.
Yeah, not even
things.
dog whistles. Like, he is out there saying it with his whole chest.
Yeah. Horrible
Yeah.
stuff.
All right, well, let's move up then. Who's going to take down Dan Patrick? Is it going to be Vicky Goodwin, Courtney Head, or Marcos Velez?
I've not really been following this race. I know that Velez has been getting at least some what feels like grassroots traction, but I don't have an opinion one way or the other.
But you know Vicky from your time in the House, though.
I do.
She was one of our seat flippers in 2018.
She did a red to blue seat. And I just don't have a feel for. I've not followed her campaign, just to be perfectly honest.
Well, maybe I can get you to gossip with me about Mike Collier, because I'm still burned up about it.
But yeah, I don't have no
How
idea.
many times are we going to mention this one? Yeah.
I'm not letting it go.
It just makes no sense. It's dumb,
Yeah.
and I don't understand his path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then let's get into it. The top of the statewide ticket, truly on the state elections, not federal yet. Everyone wants to talk about it. We're gonna get there, listener. Listen. But for governor, We got a technically a very large ballot for governor. There's like one, two, three, four, five. There's like almost 10 names on there. I know one of them has since dropped out, but his name still appears on at least the sample ballot. Andrew White, I know, has endorsed Gina Hinojosa, but
Yeah.
there are some other names people might know. Bobby Cole has been running for a long time. He's got a social media following. And then Chris Bell had previously been a nominee for governor. He is running as well. So if you want to speak to that race.
I know Chris. He ran so long ago. I don't think anybody remembers, right? His first race. He wasn't able to raise a lot of money. I think that was the race that had Carol Keaton, Rylander, Strayhorn,
And
John
Kinky
Cougar
Friedman.
Mellon, Camp in the race, or was it the Kinky Friedman race?
I think it might have been the Kinky Friedman race where there was four big nominees all at the same time, such that I think Rick Perry won outright with like 38% of the vote.
38%. Yeah,
What
yeah.
an absurd
It
result.
was like 39 if you round
We
it
should
up.
have ranked choice voting at the very least. Almighty.
But that is so long ago that I don't think anybody remembers Chris. And then he had an unsuccessful race for state senate. Um, and so Gina is very
House colleague.
savvy. Yep, Gina Hinojosa, very savvy on social media. She's a good speaker. She really is a charismatic speaker. I suspect she'll definitely be in if there's a runoff, she'll definitely be in it as the top vote getter.
Right.
And we'll see if she doesn't win outright. I see hers as the campaign with the most momentum,
Yeah.
and she's talented. There's just no way, can't say anything other than she's very, very talented and really a really good retail politician. People like her.
One of the things that I got to talk to her when I was running in my state house race, and when I was being prepped over her, everyone said she's the biggest pro public ed person probably in the house. She also just, I mean, everything having to do that. I heard that she was, I don't know if she's really talking about it in this race, like anti-charter, obviously anti-voucher, like that is like her tirade. And that's one of the things that I'd heard so much about her. And it seems to be true. And it's resonating, I think, with voters as well.
Yeah, yeah. She, I don't know about the most. Alma Allen's big, public ed champion. James
Yeah.
Talarico's big public ed champion, but she is among the leaders on pub ed.
Well, how is this for a transition? Gina Hinojosa is endorsed by both James Talarico and Jasmine Crockett.
Well,
Wow.
are there any before we go to
Who are
Senate?
they? Sorry.
Yeah.
Have you
Before
heard
we
of
go
them?
to yeah, are there? So I know there's some congressional races. We haven't really talked about that before the Senate, and it kind of is relevant because the biggest congressional race in this area is the one between that was a part of the redistricting. Mark Veazey's district 33. It got redistricted, and then he stepped down. He was going to run for county judge, but then Alyssa Simmons against Tim Mohair, who's a commissioner and she's beloved, so he stepped down, and then there's been this musical chairs, and then Julie Johnson had to figure out, is she running in her own district, which was 32? And then she decided she was going to run in 33 because it overlapped so much in her own district. And I will say, dear listener, that because I ran to fill her state seat, I have a relationship with Julie. So I feel awkward talking about this race objectively, but we try to be objective as a disclaimer on this podcast. But now, because of the Senate race, Colin Allred stepped down and he is running against Julie. And then we've got this like 3 and 4 people running with Zishan Haviz, who's got a lot of momentum as like a very progressive candidate. So there's a lot going on with that congressional race. I know you probably have a history with Julie and it's interesting because both Julie and Colin flipped red to blue seats. And Colin, he flipped like decades long congressional seat with Pete Sessions here in Dallas. And so I feel like he doesn't get the credit that he's due because of that flip. But any thoughts on that race? If you mind sharing, or just the like musical chair number of this redistricting?
Yeah, I've known Julie for a long time. I've known Colin for a long time too. Just never served with him in the Texas House. So Julie and I just have a relationship. I hosted again, I can't endorse or contribute, but I did host a meet and greet so that people in my neck of the woods could get to know her. And I will say that much of that district is anchored in Oak Cliff, and Oak Lawn Cedar Springs. Those are big voting pockets, and I will just offer this anecdotally. Julie Johnson signs all over North Oak Cliff. You cannot drive in North Oak Cliff without seeing a saturation of her signs. I have not seen one call an all red sign. That I have no idea if he's even putting them out. He may not be. Some people just say, I'm not going to do, the door stuff. I'm just going to come in, on TV, right? Because he does have a brand, so signs are probably less relevant for him. But what I am seeing is, the LGBT community heavy for Julie, and she's getting. I see Julie Johnson signs in prominent Hispanic households in North Oak Cliff. So I see her getting some traction. I think it's going to
Yeah.
be tight.
Anecdotally, I can just tell you I've received at least like 12 pieces of mail from Julie Johnson.
She's
So
a
she's
prodigious
campaigning hard.
fundraiser. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, she can raise money.
You cannot count her out. I mean, she just will out hustle you. I remember I told her on our podcast episode with her that when I knocked doors in our district out in Carrollton, they would say the last person who knocked at my door was Julie Johnson, and if you are knocking on my door too, I'm voting for you. So it's just like she herself will be out there pounding the pavement, so you can't rule her out. But I think it's interesting that we have this very progressive candidate in the mix, and he's got a lot of support for a lot of progressive people, and we've been in communication with him to try to get him on the podcast. We've just scheduling wise, we're trying to figure that out. But anyway, so that's a big congressional race that we're all kind of following. In addition to the Christian Menifee race that happened down in Houston, shout out to him.
Finally,
Yeah, they finally have a representative. He's sworn in, and then he's got to gear up for this primary, which is crazy. And then a general race. So the poor guy has so many races. But okay, at long last, shall we get into the Senate race before we wrap up our podcast?
Yeah. Not that I want to rush you, but is there any other race you want to talk about before we get to the
I think we've
race.
covered the landscape. I think we've covered the landscape, folks. Let's
Okay.
just do it.
Yeah.
All right, rip it off the Band-Aid.
Yep.
Fun fact, there are 3 candidates for U.S. Senate. There is a guy named Ahmad Hassan who, fun fact, ran in the Senate primary in Minnesota last cycle.
Wow.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, he might get 1% of the vote, but
Maybe.
we'll see. All right, so really, Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico, you have served with both of them in the Texas House, right?
I have. Now, Jasmine was there just for one session, so I served a lot longer with James, and know them pretty well. Know James a lot better, and it's funny. I got a text the other day, said, hey, from outside of the state, said, hey, I really like this Talarico guy, but is it real? Right? Is he like that? I was like, yeah, he's actually like that. He is completely authentic, on the stump. So for any listeners, regardless of who you're leaning towards or going to vote to or for, I mean, that really is who he is. He is authentically religious. He's a believer, but he is very much into the 2 very important New Testament commandments, from Jesus. This is love your neighbor, right? And love me, love me and love your neighbor. I mean, like James is more Beatitudes than Old Testament, right? That's where his head is at. And he just believes it with all his heart. And oftentimes, both he and I, during this last session, especially in response to some of the anti-LGBT bills, we would take the floor and talk about, how our faith causes us to be against these bills. And in one case, I go to worship at the Cathedral of Hope every once in a while. Really love that's an open and affirming congregation in the district I represent. So I'll go there, and the pastor there often talks about Jesus's radical inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
Radical, like an inclusivity that was not seen in the time. Right? He went out of his way to embrace people who were marginalized. And I
It's
said,
still radical.
It's still radical. And I said, that's the Jesus I walk with.
Yep.
Right? That's the one. That's the one who gets me excited and fires me up and causes me to have faith. Well, James is the same kind of way. And I can't tell you how many. I literally was called a wolf in sheep's clothing and told I was good. I was going to go to hell. That I was not going to get into heaven. I may have gone. Maybe they were saying I was going to go to purgatory.
There you go.
And I may go. I may to go to. Yeah, I may not go to heaven, but it won't be for this reason. Okay,
Yeah.
it will not be because I was against the anti-LGBT bills. But it is, and it's so refreshing to see somebody on our side to be able to speak with authority on on matters of faith in a way that we all know in our hearts to be true. And gosh, I was told by a non-believer one time, it's like, hey, I am not one of the faithful, but gosh, Jesus is someone I'd want to model my life after, right?
Hmm.
I think that messaging of loving one's neighbor and caring about one's neighbor and really wanting to uplift people is powerful and it is so on our hard drives that it just transcends. It actually transcends faith traditions. It transcends party affiliation, it transcends socioeconomic class. Very, very powerful.
Well, a lot has happened in the last couple of weeks with that race. We can't obviously go without talking a little bit about it. And there's been some negativity, and there's been some things that have been said that Talarico said, and it saddens me that we're talking about that right now in this race. And I wonder how you feel about it, because as we went kind of at the top of this segment about Taylor Rehmet and his race, I wish we were talking about that. Like, I wish we were talking about that. And it saddens me that we are kind of down in the mudslinging. But to be fair to, I think, some of the people that were putting out this content, a lot of them probably feel very strongly about Black representation and having people represent the Black vote, that they feel like they haven't been heard, and that this is such an incredibly important year that they need to be saying this. I just was wondering about like timing of all of this, and why it's coming out now, and I guess ahead of early vote so people can make decisions. But I have to say, I was proud of Colin Allred, at least for saying something in his defense. Like, I thought it was like, oh, there's the Colin who flipped a seat, like that's the guy. And because I think he's getting a lot of licks for his Senate campaign. So anyways, those are my 2 cents. I don't begrudge the content creators for what they put out. And I know that Jasmine Crockett has a lot of surrogates, and I'm a big fan of hers. I'm a big fan of James's, and I've had great interactions, as you said, Rep and Chia. Like, I've had very authentic conversations with both of them, and my dad even got to meet Jasmine Crockett once because he really wanted to meet her at the Stonewall Democrats like endorsement forum, and I just have to give her a shout out because a guy at Stonewall was like, "Hey, Jasmine, like this guy wants to come meet you because his daughter's running." And she was like, "Yeah," like, and so just met my dad in like the parking lot of the Stonewall Democrats forum. So that's just like so her, and I love that about her. And also as being like a female lawyer in this area. So, but anyways, I just wish that I hope that we can have a kumbaya moment after all of this, and we can kind of like come together and say like we are a cause that people should rally behind, like we did in SD9.
Gosh,
So,
I hope so. I hope so. I actually think so. We're all high information insiders, right? So we follow this stuff on social media. I promise you, the population at large, those November voters, an overwhelming majority of them will not even be aware. And if they were aware, they're going to forget it in like a month,
yeah.
right? I mean, even the quorum break, we had people that were wringing their hands and gnashing their teeth about strategy. I said, we're going to be. It was like August. I said, by Labor Day, people are going to forget about us. They're not even going to remember that this happened. And I think that's what's going to happen vis-a-vis the center. I think this hurts Colin, candidly. I mean, this is, I think, the backlash that I've
Mm,
seen. Again, this is anecdotal, so it's not tested in numbers. It used to be that if you thought somebody disrespected you, and you played in the same sandbox, you'd just pick up the phone if it bothered you that much, and you'd call them and say, "Hey, what did you say?" And I think James would have said something like, "Hey, I called you your campaign mediocre, man. I'm super sorry about that, but that's how I feel." And for 2 years, by the way, that's what I've heard from every Democrat that I've run into. And I
right.
always defend Colin because I'm like, you know what the worst campaign is? The Democrat who just lost statewide in
Right.
Texas. That's always the worst
They're
campaign.
always going to get the, yeah, beat up Right.
I always defend Colin on that because it is, first of all, I've never put my name on a statewide campaign, so respect for doing it.
Yep.
Number two, and I texted him right after. I said, I know you're catching a lot of heat, but thank you for having done it. He raised a historic amount, but nobody in the Democratic ecosystem, thinks anything but that it was a suboptimal campaign. I happen to think it was just a bad year.
Yeah.
It was just a bad year, and he overperformed in certain places. But what I think is going to hurt him, and people are going to in the ecosystem are just going to remember him for what felt a little petulant
Yeah.
as a response.
Right.
Pick up the phone, call him. It felt petulant and it felt weird because I also know Colin, and that didn't feel like him.
Oh.
Right? Maybe the reaction you had that he got fiery
Yeah.
is also the reaction I had that this doesn't seem like him.
Right.
Right.
Well, I don't know him as personally as you do, but I just remember
But he
I was
seems
like,
like a chill guy. He's
yeah,
always been a cool, chill guy, always smiling,
yeah,
and so for that, the language that he used is just weird, and so I feel like there's been some backlash
mm,
over that, and remains to be seen what his political future is like. He still may win that seat. It is hard to overcome that much name ID, $100 million of name ID that you have that you garnered in a senatorial campaign, and the name ID that he had beforehand,
right,
from flipping that seat. So he still may win that seat, but I thought it was a suboptimal response.
yeah,
By the way, I also didn't like James's response. You
yeah,
know, he totally took the high ground. I'm like, homeboy, this is a Senate campaign.
right.
Oh,
To
you
You
even
think
respond,
he
yeah,
should have like hit back kind of a thing?
Yes, that's what I think.
Mm.
But he took the freaking James High Road. Oh my gosh, this is and I would not have. I would have been like, hey, you have my cell phone number. The last text I had from you was 2 weeks ago. You can pick up the phone.
yeah,
Mhm.
Is that come on. The last point I'll make about it is, content creators do not have any editorial standards. Zero. And if you're and if you're a content creator that who's already come out and said, hey, I'm supporting a particular candidate, and then you attack the opposite candidate, are we in an age where we're giving that credence and legitimacy
Yeah.
as the mainstream media, by the way, did?
yeah,
And you had stories pick it up, and
yeah,
I had a content creator say something about me, and I was like, you know what? That's just flat out wrong, and you
yeah,
clearly don't know what you're talking about. Didn't even respond because I thought it was so dumb. But they do not have to fact check.
hmm,
They just don't, and so you really need to take it with a grain of salt. And the last thing I'd say about it is, hey, Twitter and Instagram are not real life. We are
amen,
operating in this ecosystem where we only care.
Yeah.
yeah,
And free tip to all candidates and future candidates who are listening. If a content creator says they want to have an off the record conversation, it is not off the
Oh my
record.
yeah.
gosh.
Well, I mean, and to be fair, like we're content creators sort of on this podcast. So, we're sort of media but we want to be, if we say something wrong, please check us. Like, please email us,
Yeah.
missiontexaspodcast@gmail.com, DM us. I think it's important to have a dialogue at least, because
Yeah.
this is where people are at. Like they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on Threads. But it was interesting. I sent an article to Alex this morning from the Texas Tribune talking about this and the role of influencers and content creators. And that's a large part why we created this podcast, is so that we can lend a voice to this space. And, we both come from different backgrounds within the party, and we both are veterans, and I have a security clearance still. I'm still in the military. So, we have standards of trying to be try to be neutral and try to be an open space and have a dialogue. And if any of these content creators are listening to this, like I hope to have you on. I've asked one of them to be on or have a coffee and let's talk about these things, because we're all in this together. We're all like, we have a common enemy, and we got to like rally behind that come November.
If I tried to hire you guys to be my content creators, would you take money from me?
No.
No,
No,
right? No.
no,
And so a lot of that is happening online, and not just in campaigns. Like the grift, among the MAGAs, on content is incredible. It's totally corrupt. And I think on our side too, content creators are taking money.
Yeah, candidly, we've lost money on this endeavor.
Yeah,
Congratulations. That's how it should be.
we have not raised money on this. We have paid our way on this with our blood and money, elbow grease.
Time,
So
talent, and treasure.
yeah, whatever we have. Yeah. Well, I guess that's it for the. Thank you for those words and your candor, Rep. Anchia. Um, should we do our good news as a way to go back up instead of down?
Yeah, palate cleanser. What's something good that's going on in your life? We all got to get better as Democrats about sharing the good news. So let's just hear something good out there.
A good friend of mine, Judge Eric Moyer here in Dallas County, when you ask him how he's doing, he always says, "Ain't nobody doing better than me." And he
Love
says it
that.
a lot better than I can deliver it. But literally, if y'all are doing exceedingly well, we may be tied because in my personal life, I'm super duper happy. On this check-in, I would just say I'm so proud of both our daughters. They're doing great. One's about to graduate from college. She's, interviewing. She's at an engineering university that's 70% men, 30% women, and she has grinded through that. It's going to get her computer science, computer engineering degree with a focus on AI, and I'm really proud of her. And her youngest daughter is at A&M, and she loves animals more than human beings, and she's going to be a vet and is going to go and live at an elephant sanctuary this summer. So I'm super proud of
I
her.
love
And
that.
my wife, Rebecca, I mean, my better three quarters, that's the stuff that makes me happy in my life.
Great.
That's great.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I similarly with my family doing great. This week, so my husband and I are both dual military. So he's in the Army, I'm in the Air Force. We don't speak on behalf of the Department of Defense.
Department of
Um,
War.
yeah, Department of War. But he was supposed to be gone all week with some training, but because of the lapse in funding and the funding issues with the administration, he got to stay home and do it all on Zoom. And so I was going to be a single parent like all week with my 3.5-year-old, who's just, she can vacillate between a total terror and like the most adorable thing you've ever seen. So that's been great. So he's been home all week, and it's been good that we've been able to balance like both of our like he has a family law career and he's a reservist. I'm in a big law firm. I'm a reservist. I'm doing this podcast. Like, so we've been able to sort of balance that this week with our 3.5-year-old. And that's been better this week as opposed to what I thought it was going to be, which was just me like hair on fire, trying to like do everything.
Yeah, my good news. This past Wednesday, I was invited to come and speak to a small group at my church. About a little over a year ago, I launched the modern worship service at First United Methodist Dallas downtown. And they have a small group that gets together on Wednesday nights, and they asked me to come and teach. And I was just so honored by that because I haven't been in that kind of a role for a very long time. I was on Young Life staff back in college and would teach regularly, but to like high school students. It was the first time I can remember. I don't think it's ever happened where a group of adults was interested in what I had to say, as far as that's concerned. I think it went really well, and it was very gratifying. I talked
Mm,
about the topic was enough, being enough, knowing
yeah.
that you are enough. A man who has God and everything else has no more than someone who has God, right?
Hmm.
A C.S. Lewis quote. And then also just having enough. Like, what does it mean to have enough? Like the constant search for more, striving, more validation, more clicks, more money, more everything. Like, when will it ever be enough? Um,
Yeah.
and I thought that was such a fun experience to get to share on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Alex, and thank you, Rep. Anchia. So, Rep. Anchia, we got the last word. We didn't talk about this really over the podcast in the last few minutes, but what do you think it's going to take to really flip Texas? Is it messaging? Is it infrastructure? Is it the right candidate, like you said earlier? Like, what do you think it's going to take? How do you think people can get involved the best way?
Hey, everybody. Early voting starts right around the corner, right?
Yeah.
Check your registration. I mean, people are like going crazy right now in this era of Trump. What can I do? Well, there's something very simple. You can start by voting regularly. So check your registration to make sure it's up to date. Make sure that you know where your polling location is. Here in Dallas County, we have vote centers that you can go to. February 17th, early voting starts, and it continues until the 27th. So we've got 10 days where you can do it. Make a plan today. And if you say, hey, I'm hell bent to vote on election day, that's going to be March 3rd. Block it off on your calendar. Know exactly when you're going to go do it. My wife and I know exactly where we're going to be on the first day of early vote, at 9 a.m. We're going to go to breakfast together, and then we're going to go vote. It's going to be a date. Do that. Do
Romantic.
that
I like
now.
that.
Breakfasts
Very
are
romantic.
those are our favorite dates. Yeah. So like that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take, everybody. We have personal responsibility here. It's our civic duty. Yes. And you can do something about what's happening in our country. And then, of course, all the other things we discussed, good candidates, donate to candidates that get you excited, that touch your heart, that you believe in, you think you're sincere. Do that too. But start with voting, and it's right around the corner.
Yep. Well, we're a low voter turnout state, so that resonates with me, and we got to get more voters out. So, Representative Anchia, thank you so much. If people want to follow you or support you, where can they find you?
I come in spicy on Twitter.
Oh.
And Instagram is more curated by my team. Although my wife is really urging me to do less and less and less and less spiciness on Twitter, which I'm, but if you look at my drafts of my unsent messages, oh my gosh, it's yeah. So sometimes the Holy Spirit's inside of me, and I want to pop off a tweet, and she's like, I was like, babe, read this, and she's like, no, do
Absolutely
not
not.
do this.
Gentleness,
So
and patience, and
I
self-control, right?
my Instagram is much more beautifully curated by my team. They're much more visual than I am. But those are two really good places to follow me. And then it's RafaelAnchia.com. I'm the only Rafael in the Texas legislature. Reach out to me. Very easy to find me. I'm one of two Rafaels in Texas politics. That goes by Rafael. The other one goes by Ted. So it's easy to find me. Really
That's a good
easy to
one.
find me. I'm glad that joke still lands. Thanks.
Yes,
I
I
knew
got
where
it.
you were going there.
Yeah. Canadian citizen Cruz.
Raphael Edward Cruz.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. That wraps up our special primary episode. We'll see our listeners next week, and God bless Texas.
God bless Texas.
You can follow us on all socials at Mission Texas Podcast. Email us at missiontexaspodcast@gmail.com. This episode is edited by Juan Jose Flores. Our music bumper is by Adam Pickerel, and our cover art is by Tina Sohn.